Welcome to My Tech Opinion, episode 21. My name is Phil Edwards and I'm in Melbourne. And in a moment, I'll be joined by my regular co-host in Perth, Shayne Johnston. In this episode's feature topic, we'll be looking at cloud computing. So let's get the show underway now. Welcome to My Tech Opinion, episode 21. My name is Phil Edwards and I'm in Melbourne, as you can see at the top of the screen. And I'm joined by my regular co-host, as I always am, from Perth, Shayne Johnston. G'day, Shayne. How are you?
Hey, Phil. How you doing?
Good. Now, before we fully get underway, I just want to remind everyone that My Tech Opinion is brought to you by Aussie Tech Heads Web Hosting. For great hosting plans and support, visit athwebhosting.com.au. For listeners who are joining us for the first time, My Tech Opinion is a program that has a deeper look at a feature topic each and every episode. And it won't always be just the two of us. Where possible, we'll also have guests join us and lend their expertise and knowledge to help us unpack our feature topic. That said, it's just the two of us today, and our feature topic is looking at cloud computing and some of the options and variations that are available on the market. So there you go. That's what we're talking about today. Shayne, how's it all going?
Yeah, pretty good. What's changed? Not a lot's changed. I haven't done any more Amazon shopping, but I'm on the verge of doing some more Amazon shopping because I got my tax refund the other day.
Oh, what are you looking at buying?
I want to get another one or two cameras.
Nice.
I've got the TP-Link cameras and...
Also, CCTV type camera?
Yeah, but I want to... Because at the moment, every time I buy something from Amazon, I actually get it delivered to work just because, I'm not home.
Yeah.
But if I get a camera that kind of... I don't know how I do it. I have to probably point it out one of the front windows, kind of, in the kind of where the front door is. And that way I'll kind of know who's coming and going and, make sure that nothing gets stolen, all that kind of stuff. So there's that. And but then in addition to the one or two cameras, the NAS I've got, the QNAP, only came with 4 free licenses for cameras.
Yes.
So I don't know what the costs are going to be for bumping that up one or two cameras.
I don't think they're that bad, but I haven't delved into that. I have ended up going for a separate NVR video recorder for camera purposes, so I have it separate from the NAS. But that's just because I'm a weirdo. But good shopping. So, are you still a Prime member?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
I had a delivery from Prime this week, and based on the tracking information, and admittedly I live all of 15-minute drive away from where the Amazon fulfillment center is in Australia at the moment, and I got notification that the product was shipped at 5:30 on a Tuesday afternoon, and it was on my doorstep by 8:30 the next morning.
Oh, wow.
Bit of lead time in terms of getting it shipped, but yeah, it was pretty good. So credit to Amazon for having their logistics suppliers under control. It's a pity that logistics supplier, Australia Post, are a bit slower for everything else. So admittedly I went parcel post, but we like to hang crap on our postal service. I had my old NAS that I sold on eBay. And, I had some speakers that I sold. It was a reasonably heavy parcel. Went to Castletown in WA. And it took 8 days to get there.
Really? I have no idea where Castletown is.
Neither do I. And the other one was, I had another, and my NAS went to WA as well. and that was to Cannington,
Oh, yeah, I know where that is.
and that took 7 days.
Yeah, well, it's a big desert that it's got to cross.
I know, and it wasn't express postage, but anyway. From my side of things, I've been putting together some stuff for video-y sort of things.
Oh, okay. What for?
I'm doing some recording for a friend for a business thing, recording a speech for a what do you call it, a training session. So I've just been doing some stuff with that. And one of the things I did buy the other day, which I'll use for a few things, is an external portable monitor.
Oh, right.
And it just looks like a tablet, but it plugs in via USB-C. So for my NUC, it'd be perfect for that. And also my wife's laptop, which we're doing double duty. The thing is that I was trying to make sure, because there's two types of portable monitors. There is USB-C and then there's USB 3.
Yep.
Basically the same monitor, different connection types. And trying to read up on the specs of USB-C is diabolical. It is absolutely diabolical, because there is this subsection of specs depending on the device and what the port does. So you can have USB-C, but then does it have display link included as part of that subset? You know, USB-C Thunderbolt display link on there? Because if it didn't have display link, display port. Display link's a software. Display port is the port. If it didn't have display port, then it wouldn't work even though it's a USB-C plug. So if the model of laptop that my wife uses was a model older, then it wouldn't have worked, but because it's the newer one, it does.
All right. Lucky.
Yeah. And then the other thing was, I was deciding whether I go the USB 3 or the USB-C option, and finding out whether there's one thing I said was that if you're using the USB 3, it's using display link. Yep. And it has a performance overhead. So it needs to do resources to get the signal through that USB 3 connection, whereas a display port, it's basically just a straight pass-through.
Yep.
So finding out about that is just like, I was about 4 or 5 hours worth of research, and all I concluded was that it would work on the devices that I wanted it to work on.
Yeah, and there's a difference in data throughput between the two, isn't there?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, the USB-C with Thunderbolt can do 40 gigabits or something, I don't know, some huge amount. But so I've gone the USB-C option, and I thought, well, it won't work on some of my other devices, my current desktop and my current laptop, but I thought long term, they probably will when I upgrade them, because the monitor is not something that you upgrade that often. So I just went, we'll just do that, and I'll future-proof myself a little bit.
Yep. Fair enough.
So, yeah. So I know that sounds banal, but it is. You wonder why people get confused.
Yeah. Yeah.
USB is supposed to be, yes, I know they've changed the plug type, but it's just supposed to be consistent, and it's just supposed to plug it in and it works.
Well, given the U in USB stands for universal.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. So, yeah, so that was about as exciting as it gets from here. I was just talking to you, Shayne, beforehand. I might have to go and buy another sound card. We'll see how this current one goes. It seems to be going okay right now, but we'll play around with it and see what happens.
Yep.
And I really don't need an excuse to spend more money. So, yes. So there you go. There's what's been happening this week. Other things being in the news, Telstra has rolled out, most likely as a trial, their 5G network on the Gold Coast. The problem is there is no
devices.
There's no devices. Now, I'm assuming that they're primarily doing this as a testing ground to test devices and what they can do and their throughput and things like that. The thing that annoys me with 5G is that everyone's like, oh, 5G is the future of communications. The future of communication, NBN should be worried, blah, 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 blah. The fact is that if I had a 5G device right now and I'm standing in the Gold Coast, it's going to work a treat.
Yep.
And then Apple brings out a new iPhone, or Samsung brings out a new Galaxy with 5G, and they sell 1 million of those units in the first 6 weeks, and the network's shot again.
Yep.
I remember when I first bought my iPhone 5, which was the first iPhone with 4G, that I remember going to to me, the great litmus test of how well a network is performing is to take it to the MCG during AFL finals.
Yep.
And I remember sitting at the MCG with my iPhone 5 4G, and it was like I got it on the Friday. This was on the Saturday, and I'm sitting there during the game, scrolling through data, going, "This is amazing! Like I've never had so good connection at the AFL games ever."
Yep.
Sure enough, within 12 months, as more 4G phones came on the market from all different manufacturers, back to the way it was, and it continues to this day.
Yeah.
So 4G technology is, pretty good in itself. It's just not consistent anywhere.
No, but that particular kind of scenario, I don't know if we spoke about it last week, or I get confused with all the podcasts I listen to, but I'm sure that there's a different broadcast technology that is either been released or been tested where it uses the bandwidth differently. I think it was broadcast B instead of A or something weird like that. I think Telstra was actually the one that was trialling it here as well.
Here we go. So, and I think it still is prone to congestion. I don't know enough about the 5G network at this stage.
Yep.
But look, I'll hold off. The fact is that fixed line, like they connect all of the base stations for mobile networks with fibre.
Yep.
For a reason.
Yep. Oh, some of them are linked with by microwave. Yep.
Yeah, no, they do microwave, and I know that Vodafone, when they first opened in Australia, had 90% of their base stations microwave linked. But I'm just the point I'm saying is that I think we should hold fast on 5G. Well, I'm not saying it's not going to be good. I'm just saying I think we should all just
calm the farm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, as I said in the notes, it's a little bit. You can make the comparison with 4K. It's like, well, why did people bother bringing out 4K TVs when the content wasn't there? But then, it's a catch-22. It's like, well, they're not going to do content until people have got the ability to watch the content.
True. Yeah, look, it'll. I mean, they've got to build the network at some point.
Yep.
I think I'm not against. Like, I'm not trying to say 5G is going to be crap. My issue is that everyone. I just read all this commentary saying 5G is going to be an NBN killer. It's going to do this. It's going to do that.
Yeah, it's going to cure cancer.
No, it's like I think we should just wait and see what happens before we have these. I mean, I think they were talking not about NBN killer, but they were talking about 3G like it was going to be the greatest thing since last meet, and that was congested pretty damn quick.
Yeah.
Speaking of 4K, discussion point without notice. Foxtel this week announced that they would be starting up a 4K channel by the end of this year.
Yes.
The interesting thing about it is the fact that it's 4K. They will have one channel that will have some sport on it, as well as documentaries and things like that. And I think if you're on the HD pack, the Platinum pack or the Sports HD pack, you will get it included. Now, the thing about it is that you will need to have, it will only be available on Foxtel satellite.
Yep.
So if you're a cable user, because Foxtel announced recently that they were ditching the cable, they were cutting the cord, so to speak.
Yeah.
And they're already undertaking a program that if you were to sign up for Foxtel right now, that you would be signed up as a satellite customer, and their standard tech fix for cable users, if there's a problem, is that you have to move to satellite. Like they're going, we're not going to fix the cable problem. We're just going to put you on satellite.
Yeah.
And then progressively they'll announce migration of existing customers. So basically, if you want 4K and you're on a cable point, you're going to have to upgrade.
Yep.
The other thing is that the IQ3, we're going to call it IQ 3.5, I did not realize this, is compatible for 4K. And it is being enabled via a software update.
All right.
So you have to have a specific IQ box to do it.
Yep.
But yes, they're going to enable that via a software update. So yeah, some interesting stuff there. Foxtel have said that for their cricket coverage that they will be doing of Test cricket in 4K, it will be they will be basically using all available broadcast 4K services in Australia for that event.
All right. Okay.
So yeah, interesting.
Isn't one of the downsides with satellite delivery the fact that it compresses the living daylights out of the signal and the quality?
Not that I know. Well, yeah, but it depends on how much bandwidth is available.
Yeah.
So it's what they've allocated for. It's what they've allocated specifically for the Foxtel channels.
Okay.
So for example, if we look at digital radio, for those in capital cities, you might have a DAB radio. Each broadcaster is given a particular amount of bandwidth to use for their services. And the way that the licensing set up in Australia is that they can actually put through whatever amount of stations they want, as long as they don't exceed that bandwidth. So you could have one ultra high quality station, or you can have two, and I don't know what the bit rates are. So, if someone's listening, they can inform us. Send us an email, mytechopinion@prosumerit.com. You can compress, you can have whatever you like. So you could have, 64-bit mono channels and run 8 stations.
Yep.
Or something like that. So it comes down to how much bandwidth they have and what they're allocating to that. So I think Foxtel are using the Optus satellite too, but okay, interesting. I know that one thing that they don't do on the satellite services, or they might only do the SD channels, that they don't rebroadcast the local television networks on that. But what they do in the newer IQ3 onwards boxes is that they have terrestrial tuners in them. So you plug in the Foxtel cable, you plug in the standard antenna, and it will mix your different services all into one.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it will place the standard channels into the Foxtel program guide.
Oh, okay.
So
should have known that when I started my Foxtel service.
Yeah, well, I had Foxtel for a short time at the house here, and that was and I had on satellite, and that was the one thing that I wasn't impressed about. But that was obviously would have been IQ1 days.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, that was just a question without notice. Another one that you've included in the show notes, Shayne, was the headline, which was a little bit misleading. But we'll go with it anyway. It says, "Could Amazon buy Coles?" Now, Wesfarmers, a Western Australian business, head office not far from where you are, Shayne, of course, is the owner of Coles Supermarkets as a part of their acquisition of the Coles Group 10, 12 years ago. They are looking at splitting Coles off into its own separate listed entity, and they're keeping all the other stuff.
Yep.
But should that happen, could Amazon come along and buy Coles? And they probably could. But I don't think that they will.
Really?
Yeah, because I've tried to look into what Amazon, Amazon have acquired through the journey, and they've primarily acquired they haven't acquired bricks and mortar retailers. They've taken over. There was a product called Zappos, I think it was, which was a shoe retailer. They took them over. Book Depository, another online retailer, they took those guys over, or they've set up in competition with them. They have started up some of their own bricks and mortar stores, but they haven't taken. Oh no, they have bought Whole Foods. They bought one Whole Foods. I will take that into account.
And they've recently bought a pharmaceutical company over in the US as well.
Yeah, and the pharmaceutical is a bit different because the rules here on pharmaceuticals are on pharmacy dispensary are different to America.
Oh, okay.
So you're allowed to have corporate ownership of pharmacies, whereas in Australia, that's very tightly controlled by the Pharmacy Guild. And while you might see big chains like Chemist Warehouse around, the pharmacy part of that is sort of done as a franchise partnership model, not necessarily a direct ownership by a corporate entity.
Okay.
I was reading a little bit about it the other day, and there's some funky rules around things like that, because I know that I think Coles, going back a while, Coles or Woolworths were looking at trying to get the pharmacy rules deregulated so that they could do exactly that and have pharmacies within supermarkets.
All right.
And if those rules changed, your local pharmacist up the road will cease to exist within a couple of years. I can guarantee that.
I know when they were looking at our archaic shopping laws over here in WA, because we were like really late to the game when it came to Sunday trading.
Yep.
And one of the rules is that if you...
And you're still fairly restricted too, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, but one of the rules is, and it still might be the case, that you can only do Sunday trading if you've got less than X amount of staff. So, a smaller kind of shop can open on Sunday if they wanted to, but at the time, someone like a Harvey Norman couldn't.
Now, we'll come back to the Harvey Norman discussion in a minute.
Yeah, I think we're going to the same place because of how they kind of break up their business and how they treat it as individual kind of franchises.
Because that's how the Harvey Norman business model, which is you walk into a Harvey Norman store and you'll see, bedding and, outdoor furniture and electronics and, couches and what have you. And you go, well, it's all Harvey Norman. But the truth is that there's about 7 or 8 franchises who operate within those stores, and if you're buying a bed and then you're buying a couch, you're actually buying it from 2 different retailers.
Yeah.
And Jerry owns, if it's a standalone Harvey Norman store, Jerry owns the building and has the buying power to get the products.
Yep.
And the reason why he set that model up was because the laws that you're talking about in Western Australia were the laws that were in New South Wales in the 80s. Yeah. And that was his way to get around those laws.
Yeah.
But there were some exceptions for things like Bunnings and stuff. Was that right?
Yeah, I can't remember the exact
Hardware
details.
Hardware or home improvement, I think, were the exceptions to the rule or something.
Yeah, and I guess that probably was because, if you had a leaky tap and you were drowning in something, you needed a plumber straight away, and that plumber needed supplies kind of straight away, then they needed to get them from somewhere.
Yeah, I am quite funny. We were out last night, and I was driving home at about 11:05 at night, and it shows first world problems. Our Woolworths was open, is normally up until midnight, 7 days a week.
Yep.
But because they're doing renovations there, they're closing it at 10.
Yep.
To allow more time in store to do that work. And I was just furious that I couldn't go to a supermarket within 7 k's of my house after 11 o'clock on a Saturday night.
Yes, first world problems.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, but yes, the thing, and I think the article that, going back to the Wesfarmers Amazon Coles discussion, the article basically said, is Wesfarmer is asking the question, and I don't think they've put it so eloquently as I will. Is Wesfarmers stupid by getting rid of Coles? And the reason being is that if you look at the sum of the parts of retail Wesfarmers, being Coles, Officeworks, Bunnings, Target, Kmart, and a periphery of other smaller businesses here and there, they are perfectly set up from a product offering to create effectively their own Amazon.
Yeah.
And by cutting a key component out of that, are they shooting them? What is it? The terminology? I don't know.
Throwing the baby out with the bathwater?
Yeah, something like that. Welcome to bad terminologies, us. Because they. But the thing was that, Wesfarmers has generally created an environment where they have all the businesses have their own autonomy, and then they just report up to a thing, and that they would have to combine that. Now, if you can hear noise coming through, I think it's raining or it's either hailing outside my window as we speak. So if noise or windows break, you know what the cause of that is. Anyway, it's torrential out there. So the thing is that they're worried about the oncoming, Amazon, should they get in particularly into the fresh food and grocery market, and should they do that, was there a lost opportunity there by separating Coles completely into a separate listed entity?
Yep.
Who knows? I don't know. And I'm sure that there would be a logistical situation involved in why that they haven't done that. And one thing I could think of from creating a single online store would be, how do you create a logistics distribution platform that is cost effective? Do you create a new warehouse that has a heap of different stuff from all the different retailers in there? Do you just pass that order through to them individually? Who knows?
Yep.
Interesting to see what will happen in that space and how quickly the Amazon push will be into Australia, though. Wow, it's really hailing next to my house. And the last item was that NBN have announced that they are doubling. They have doubled their revenue to $2 billion in the space of 12 months. So as they're getting more and more premises on, as well as getting a higher spend because of the new fee to get people on that 50 megabits tier.
Yep.
Are you surprised by that announcement?
I'd like to know, and I don't know if the story kind of goes into the detail. Revenue's great, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're making a profit.
No, and NBN won't make a profit for a long time.
Yeah.
The thing that I find interesting about this is that if I looked at the rollout map of Melbourne, where I am, and weirdly enough, I keep a very strong eye on the rollout map because I'm weird.
Well, even though you've already got it.
Yeah, I do. We'll come back to something in a minute. I'll drop something that could be me dreaming, and it may not be. And I'm keeping a regular eye on it. Anyway, they have. You would have thought that rolling the NBN out in metropolitan areas where they've got a high density of houses, which means that. Anyway, hang on. I'm going to confuse this, and I'm sorry to our viewers and listeners. I'm going to go back a step. When the Tony Abbott took over as Prime Minister in 2013, and they decided to do their review into the NBN and do their multi-technology mix product, and move away from the pure fibre and wireless option, And their justification for it was that by rolling out a fibre to the node at the time, now fibre to the curb network, and utilising HFC, they would be able to roll it out quicker, get more premises connected, which would in turn provide more revenue, and therefore have the NBN start paying for itself quicker.
Yep.
Which I get the point. I don't necessarily agree with the execution, but I get the point. So that was what they decided. That was the method that they did. So the thing is, though, is that when I look at regional areas in Australia compared to metropolitan areas, they seem to have had a lot of towns and regional centres with NBN coverage a lot earlier, which I would have thought would cost more because they've got to roll out a lot more cable to get to an equivalent amount of houses. I could be wrong on that. Someone can tell me wrong. Whereas I would have thought that, yes, you've got to look after regional areas at the same time, but by having a increased rollout in metropolitan areas, one would start transitioning them across. And I reckon that looking at a rollout map of Melbourne in particular, and I don't look at Perth. Let's have a look. We'll go to NBN Co. That they seems to be a lot of planned but not active services in Melbourne.
Yep.
Which I just am like, wouldn't you have had a focus on, areas? Like what I'll do is,
it depends on a lot on the politician and whose seat it is, and
absolutely. But there are swathes of brown in Melbourne that are densely populated areas that still haven't been connected, and it surprises me.
Yeah. The
point is, the more that they connected, the more the revenue goes up, and everyone's going to be crapping on about the NBN and all the things that are going on with it, and it's going to be worth nothing and things like that. The government of whatever flavour needs to hold fat for 5-10 years after it's completed, and the company will be worth a fortune.
Yep.
It will be worth a fortune. The same criticisms were made of the Postmaster General's office in the early 1900s of why would you waste the expense of rolling out for this newfangled contraption called the telephone.
Yeah.
So it'll be fine.
Yeah. They also said that they were bumping up HFC to DOCSIS 3.1.
Yes, but they're only doing it from a stability perspective, and at this point in time, they're not taking advantage of the speed increases.
But they're there, so they're future-proofing.
Oh yeah, no, and DOCSIS 3.1 was always on the roadmap anyway. But I don't know. There's some strange things that the NBN do at times. There's been a lot of discussion around the technology choice program and how much that costs. And interestingly, there are people who, and I don't know what speeds they're getting on fibre to the node, but there are a lot of people who were, they had budgeted $15,000 to upgrade their internet to fibre to the premises. They must really, really want it.
Yeah.
But, I will be going through a process of finding out how much it's going to cost to do fibre to the premises. I don't need it. It is not a priority because I'm finding fibre to the curb to be quite good and stable. But my argument is that when I do my house build is that I'm ripping out all of the cable anyway, and I will have to rerun a new cable into the pit at the front of the property. So if I'm running new cable and running the conduit to do it, why not find out how much it's going to cost to do fibre to the premises?
Yeah.
Yep. Makes sense to me. Anyway, that said, NBN haven't got a technology choice program option available for fibre to the curb to fibre to the premises yet, because someone is sitting at the office drinking coffee. Now, the final thing I'll say on the NBN was that what I was going to mention before was that I was doing when you connect your premises to the fibre when you connect your premises to the NBN, they update your individual streets. So if you were to go to your street, for example, on the NBN rollout map and pin drop on all of your neighbours,
Yep.
You will find out who is connected and who is not. Now, your area where you live, Shayne, you're on fibre to the premises. How long have you had fibre to the premises for?
Where are we now? I reckon probably 2-3 years.
Right. So you would have passed the point where the legacy services would have now been turned off.
Yep.
So in theory, every house in your street should be fibre to the premises connected or have no service at all.
Yeah.
So whereas I'm 6 weeks from availability, so I was one of the first houses in the street to get it.
Yep.
I would have been the first had some other things not occurred, but anyway, that's a whole other discussion. But I was looking at around the 28th, 29th of the month, and I did the pin drop on all of the street houses in the street, and that's individually doing 35, 36 houses. It's not quick. And I noticed that about 70% of the houses were connected to the NBN. And of the remaining ones that were not, the 20 about, we'll say, out of the 30% that weren't, 66% of that 30%, so 2/3 of the 30% that weren't, were saying not available yet. So they've got some issue with their cabling. So of the houses that were eligible, hardly any decided not to connect.
Yep.
At this point. I went back about 3 or 4 days later to go and do the pin drop, and there's only about 6 houses that have connected. So I surmise that one of two things occurred. Mm-hmm. A, NBN updated their records incorrectly.
Yep.
Or they deliberately updated their records to show that more houses were connected than actually were.
Yeah.
So I have made a note of all of those houses that were not connected. And I will go back and do the check again at the end of the month. We'll cut that a short period of time. And I will drop the pin and see if that figure has changed and how much has changed. And I will do that as a sample for the next 3 to 6 months.
Okay.
And see exactly if there's some anomalies in what's going on the reporting there.
Fair enough.
I could be conspiracy theorying it, but we'll see. Anyway, that's it. Enough about NBN. What you do need the NBN for, though, we don't, but it's helpful for cloud computing.
Yes, you do.
And because, if everything's happening outside of your premises, you need to do that. We're going to talk about that in our feature topic, though, Shayne. Did you know that?
Yeah, I had an inkling.
Good. I'm glad you did, because then that means that you're more prepared than I am. No, I've done some research, people. It's all right. We are going to take a break on My Tech Opinion, and we're going to come back with our feature topic, which is on cloud computing, straight after this. And welcome back to My Tech Opinion. It is now time for our feature topic, which in this episode is looking at cloud computing. You suggested this one, Shayne, and what made you think about suggesting cloud computing as a discussion point?
It's just flavour of the month at the moment.
Yep.
I've been listening to podcasts that are kind of dedicated to cloud computing. Mainly the ones that the packet pushers produce. Say that fast. And then we're still going through a transition at work to move things to the cloud.
Yep.
And there's a lot of stuff that even at the personal kind of consumer level that is already in the cloud that people just might not realise that they're already doing cloud computing. If they're using Gmail, it's cloud computing. Office 365 is cloud computing. If they're backing up to the cloud in any way using iDrive or CrashPlan or any of those, it's cloud computing. So I thought it'd be a good time.
Absolutely. I think that you mentioned Gmail there, and it's even though it's still around, but really its precursor in the free email market was Hotmail, and people have had Hotmail/Gmail addresses for probably nearly 20 years now.
Yeah.
And that's all thanks. That is really our first foray into a cloud computing type environment. Now, obviously, that's developed and changed over time. We've got a heap of links to put into the show notes, but the one from IBM sort of succinctly puts it nicely, and it says cloud computing. So I suppose the question is, what is cloud computing?
Yeah.
We'll answer that first. Cloud computing, often referred to simply as the cloud, is the delivery of on-demand computing resources, anything from applications to data centers over the internet on a pay-for-use basis. Some examples of some of the reasons are elastic resources, scale up and down quickly and easily to meet demand, metered service, so you only pay for what you use, and self-service, all of the IT resources you need with self-service access. So we'll go through the various different options in a minute, but the cloud computing, I suppose, is from however you want to. It means different things to different people.
Yep.
That's probably the best way to put it. From a consumer level, one of the reasons why cloud computing, we tend to use cloud-based services is because our increasing reliance on mobile devices means that we can have consistent information across multiple devices wherever we are.
Yeah.
And, one of the things that examples that I like is when I set up a Dropbox account for the first time in eight or so years ago. And the main reason I used it was so that I had copies of passports, itineraries, bookings, and everything for traveling, so that I had them in a location that if I happened to lose all of my stuff,
Yep.
that I could get access to, copies of my identification and references and all that wherever I was. And I think that really from a consumer level, and I'm happy for you to agree or disagree with me, cloud computing sort of started as we'll say a software as a service, but before that term was coined with things like Gmail and what have you, and Hotmail, and also web browsers, web hosting servers.
Yeah.
So you having a website, you put it on a server so that it's always connected and people can access it whenever you like. And they could do some basic transactional functions like web shops and things like that. Because the thing is, you can, taking it back a step, if you wanted to host a website in your house, you can do that. But who does?
I used
No
to.
one really does. You used to?
Yeah.
With a domain pointed to it and everything?
Yeah.
And so why? Okay, I'm lobbing this at you.
Mm.
Why did you stop it?
Because of all the overheads, really. I mean, I did it to learn how it all kind of worked.
Yep.
But then ongoingly, you then become responsible for making sure that all the updates are installed. And that's the kind of the updates of the hosting platform, then the updates for the language of the web page that you use, and then the framework that you might use. So, like if you had a WordPress site,
yep,
you had to make sure that the PHP was up to date. You then had to make sure that WordPress was up to date. And if you had themes on top of that, you had to make sure that they were up to date.
Yep.
It just got all too hard.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons that you wouldn't do it is because I'm not saying yours was, but the other thing is the infrastructure in your property is also not at the same level as well. So
yeah,
if all of a sudden you had a lot of traffic going to your website, it impacts your home internet connection.
Yes, because it was ADSL back then.
Yeah. So and the other thing is that potentially not saying that it would, but it potentially opens your personal network up for malicious actors as well. So, but from an individual perspective, always on servers are, are handy because it provides that information. It allows you to get access to that information all the time wherever you are. And that has then developed into different sort of platforms. So, one of the ones that I can think of is, in terms of day-to-day use, is backups, just straight backups from a business perspective. So if you had a good backup regime, you'd do your daily backups, and then you would have your backups taken off site, and you would keep them for a period of time. And then once they're off site, you would, rotate them through once a week, and then you would have a monthly backup for longer term archiving, so on and so forth. And you would physically have to take those backups off site.
Yeah.
Because business continuity rules say that, well, if you've got backups, but they're in the site that you're backing up in and the site burns down, then your backups are useless.
Yep.
However, cloud, having them go off site through an internet connection means that someone physically doesn't have to move them. It can be all automated.
Yeah.
So, you and you have that availability to go out there. So, that I know I'm sort of diverging and I'm oversimplifying it, but that is where there's an advantage of having a cloud-based service.
Yep.
Now, there's a few terms that come around to go a bit deeper. There's a few terms that go around that people will have heard of or may not have heard of, and we'll go into some of them in more detail. There's firstly software as a service. So cloud-based applications or software as a service run on distant computers in the cloud that are owned and operated by others that are connected to users' computers via the internet and usually a web browser. Then there's platforms as a service. Platforms as a service provides a cloud-based environment with everything required to support the complete life cycle of building and delivering web-based applications without the cost and complexity of buying and managing the underlying hardware, software, and provisioning and hosting. Then there's infrastructure as a service, which is it provides companies with computing resources, including servers, network storage, and data center space on a pay-per-use basis. And then they go into differences such as public cloud, private clouds, and hybrid clouds. So the one that you mentioned, Shayne, we'll go into software as a service as a starting point. You mentioned Office 365.
Yep.
Now, Office traditionally, when you're a Microsoft user, you would pay, there was some different options, but effectively you would pay $500 and you would have a copy of Office installed on your computer. And then if you wanted to upgrade, you had to pay another $500 to get the upgrade. Now, the disadvantage is that if you didn't want to pay the $500 and the second lot of $500, you kept the old version and you would continue running that for a long, long, long period of time. And I remember going back years ago that you would always be running a generation behind on Office because you never want to actually pay for the upgrade.
Yeah.
And it becomes a stagnant sort of. So there's two disadvantages to it from both sides of the fence. From a business perspective, when you're rolling that out, and it's all very well to spend $500 on a computer that you have in your house, but when you're then buying 20 computers for an office, and that's a small office, you're looking at $10,000 outlay just for software, let alone your hardware side of things.
Yep. And
so what it means for the business is that they go, well, that's a capital purchase and we have to amortize that over its 4-year lifespan, where in the reality is we just want to pay a little bit every month. And often businesses, what they would do is that they would borrow money to pay for that upgrade and then they would pay it back at a monthly rate.
Yep.
And what the the software as a service is allowed is, because those devices are always connected to the internet, things like that. What software as a service is allowed is that they give access to a particular product, you only pay a monthly fee, and then and so they're taking out that capital purchase perspective, and there's tax benefits and there's all these sorts of things involved in it. But the great thing about it is that, I can have, if you're a business that grows and contracts and does all these sort of things, if I go, well, I've got 10 people in the office now, you might do, and I'm probably going to confuse this, I apologize. So say, for example, you have 10 people in an office at day one, and then in day, we'll say, so it's day one of year one. And then at the end of year two, you've got a 4-year upgrade cycle on your computers. And then at the end of year two, which is halfway through your cycle, your head count in your business grows by another 10. So you've got 20. Now, what you do is you've got to go and buy 10 more computers and 10 more Microsoft Office licenses to have everyone using the same thing. And then at the end of 4 years, yes, for the first 10 computers, you've bought the license for the whole 4 years. But the second 10, you've only utilised it for 2 years, and then you're upgrading it again. So the benefits outweigh it a bit. So software as a service, it goes, well, you've got 10 now, and when you get 10 more in 2 years' time, you can just go, I'll buy 10 more licenses. But because you're only paying monthly, you are only spending a smaller amount to get what's there.
Yep.
But the other advantage is at the end of year 3, which a year left, you might go, well, we're actually losing staff and we're going to contract down to 15 instead of about 20. You can go, well, I don't need those licenses anymore, and I turn them off.
Yep.
So you're only paying for what you use. So the idea of software as a service is that it becomes scalable. That's the short version of all of that is it's scalable. So it allows you to manage your business. Now, the other thing is that the way that Microsoft are offering in particular their platform for Office is that they're saying, well, we'll also handle your Exchange server. So rather than having a server on-prem, we will handle an Exchange server, and we'll handle it in our data center, and we will handle your data storage. So it's got backup capability, and we'll handle a few things like that. And we'll bundle that into your price. So the server that you provision in your office is going to actually be cheaper, because a lot of people, you don't need to have a server, but you can still have one. And they do it a lot for, shared resources like shared files and things like that.
Yep.
But by outsourcing that to Microsoft, you're actually reducing your overheads in the office, because you're not having to have the infrastructure set up to handle the type of users that you've got.
Yep.
And so that helps. That saves you costs in the long run in your business. The other thing is that because we also have an expectation these days that we can get our emails everywhere, we can access our files everywhere from a mobile device and all that sort of thing, having your mail server off-site and available all the time means that you are making it easier to meet the demands of what your users expect of your systems.
That said, obviously, if you've got an Exchange server on-prem, you still can make that available through online web services.
Oh, absolutely. But I'll give you an example. I know of an organisation that has a reasonably large rollout and of on-prem Exchange, and that they're looking to implement a bring your own device policy. So this was a case study that I'd read, and the advice from their IT provider was, until you move to Microsoft Cloud, don't implement bring your own device.
Yep.
Because the system that you would either need to do one of two things. You would either, or two results would happen. You would either need to pay a substantial amount of money to scale up your infrastructure to support the extra users that you would have anticipating connecting in, or you would need to, or if you don't do that and you turn the bring your own device system on, you will crash your Exchange server network.
Yep.
Because they're not designed to handle that. Whereas if you're going to software as a service, now there are, some pros and cons to that, and depending on your provider. But a provider like Microsoft, it is designed to go, well, we're going to add, another 1,000 users into that environment tomorrow.
Yeah.
And the other thing to remember as well is that we go, well, I've got one email address on my Gmail service or on my, Exchange account or whatever it is. So, really I can't use that much data. But then I'm looking in my room where I'm sitting right now, and I've got a laptop in front of me. I've got my desktop on the other side of the room. I have my phone and I have an iPad, and they're all connected into my email service.
Yep.
So the thing is, yes, it's one user, but that's 4 data connections, just off the top of my head, going into the one server. So they're using 4 times the amount of resources, even though it's just one person.
Yeah.
So so that's the thing. If you have a business of 100 people, but they've all got 3 devices each, that's actually, you need the overheads for 300 to go in there. And this is what cloud helps with. Continuing on, we'll have a wider discussion. There's also platform as a service. So that is not just accessing a particular tool. It's having effectively a system there that you can deploy products through, that we talked about. And then the other one is infrastructure as a service. We touched on that. Now, the advantage of infrastructure as a service is that you might have a situation where you go, well, I want my own servers, and I want to run my own particular platforms on there, and I need to do what I need to do on them. So whether it be data crunching, for databases, or it's, handling our sensitive data, but I want the ability I don't want to have to manage that within my own premises or set up a data center. I can go and buy servers of the spec that I want, or rent them in a particular data center, and I can have the ability to scale that up and scale that down.
Yep.
So, one example in Australia is Click Frenzy. I don't know what platform that they use, but I'm going to assume that they probably use Amazon Web Services. But Click Frenzy, if I said to you, when was the last time you visited the Click Frenzy website? And Shayne, your answer would be? Probably say never, but we'll say...
I've never visited it, but I'm aware of the issues that they've had in the past.
Yeah, so basically what they would do is they would go, well, we have a platform that we want to use, and 10 months of the year, we expect to have, this amount of traffic coming in. But when we launch our sales, which we do twice a year, we are going to have this much, and they're going to, expand what they need. Now, the thing is, for them, if they want to handle that in-house, they've got to pay for software or a system that can handle the peak, but only use it twice a year.
Yep.
Whereas they can go to an outsourced provider and go, you've got my servers on there. By the way, we're doing this on a certain date. We're going to need X amount of extra computing platform, power, to handle that influx.
Yep.
And they do that. And then the good thing is that cloud provider can turn around and go, all right, you're done. What we can do is we can reallocate that hardware to another company for when they have their peaks.
Yep.
So, that you can have your own, there are some places you can even buy your own server and put it in their data center.
Yep.
Which sort of fits in with that infrastructure as a service model. All right, what have I missed out on so far, Shayne?
There's a couple of gotchas with the things that we've covered so far.
Yeah, tell me. I'm just rabbiting on.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So, and this is only through my experience with what we're going through at work, but because we're kind of in a hybrid situation at the moment, especially with Exchange, we've got a large portion of our staff are what we call support workers because they look after our customers directly, and all they really need is access to email and a couple of other things.
Yep.
So their Office 365 users and their Exchange or their emails are in the Exchange in the cloud on the Office 365 platform.
Yep.
The downside is that they can't be members of any email groups or get access to any other mailboxes that are on-prem. So, so there's that gotcha in a hybrid environment. You're about to say something.
No, I was going to say, so why... So one of the... what I'll do is I'll give you a scenario. So I'm involved at our local community radio station.
Yep.
We have Office 365 available. I don't think we utilise it to the full extent that we can, but we have it there. And all of our email services go through Office 365.
Yep.
We also have OneDrive, SharePoint, and some shared resources as part of that platform.
Yep.
However, we still have a Windows server in the office that primarily handles DHCP functions, routing, things like that at the internal level, and also has shared network storage.
Yep.
What is the advantage of having a hybrid solution like you've got, or not moving your staff over to an entire cloud-based for, say, Exchange, but then still have local resources for, that heavy load file thing that you might need to do in the office?
Because those people...
I'm genuinely interested.
Yeah, no, well, those people are the bulk of our staff.
Yep.
They also include kind of casual workers, so you might find that someone might not work for a week, and they'll come back and do a couple of days, and then they'll have another week or two off. Yep. They don't generally; those sorts of stuff won't need access to folders and file shares and all that kind of stuff that the regular staff member would. But what they do need access to is access to obviously information, so they can still get access to things like our SharePoint or our intranet, which is hosted on a SharePoint on-prem.
Yep.
But like for argument's sake, we've got a site that's Bentley, one of our biggest sites. Most of the staff would be support workers, and then obviously you've got managers and supervisors and all that kind of stuff that have got on-prem accounts. We can't put, as it stands, the support workers and the managers all in one email in an email distribution list, because you can't have people that are on an Office 365 hosted Exchange mailbox in a mail list that's hosted on-prem. So they can't. You can't send one email to a distribution list and cover both groups.
So why wouldn't you move everyone else onto Office 365?
Because we've only got, and I don't know whether it's a special deal for us because we're a charity or whatever, but we've only got 1,500 licenses that are free. Whereas if you had everybody on Office 365 or if you had everybody on-prem, either way, we would we'd go over our allocation of licenses, and at the end of the day, it would cost us more. Right.
And yes, so and I have, through the radio station, we have the charity licenses as well.
Okay.
So
but you don't have 1,500 staff.
No, not at all. So yes, no, that's fair enough. So so talking about hybrid cloud, the specific a description of it is: a hybrid cloud uses a private cloud foundation combined with the strategic integration and use of public cloud services. Reality is a private cloud can't exist in isolation from the rest of the company's IT resources and the public cloud. Most companies with private clouds will evolve into manage workloads across data centers, private clouds, and public clouds, therefore creating hybrid clouds. So there you go. So it's a mix of those, which is effectively what you're doing in that. That's an oversimplification of it. Now, a couple of things about cloud. Now, we've touched on it a little bit, but I'm going to go into some of the pros and cons, and then we can freeform it after that. If I have clicked the right thing, what am I doing wrong on my laptop? Cool, I've just frozen my laptop. Gotta love when that happens.
It's a Mac, isn't it?
Pardon?
It's a Mac, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I will say that I haven't fully rebooted this machine in probably about 5 weeks.
Oh, really?
And it's the first time it's frozen. So when that happens on a Windows machine, come back to me. I have to throw that out there. Yeah, cool. All right, we're just going to reboot that.
Do you want to take a technical break?
Yeah, we're going to have a very short break here on what we'll do. Hang on. We'll have a gap and then I'll edit this nicely together. We're going to take a very short break here on My Tech Opinion, and we'll come back with more on our discussion on cloud computing when our local computers work straight after this. All right.
Cool. I need a drink anyway.
Now, even though it's come up with a restart option, that won't click.
Oh, you restarted it before the show.
No, that was the NUC.
I want to, and we could probably do it in the pros and cons. The other thing I wanted to mention was what people tend to do when they migrate to the cloud is that when you're on-prem, you've got a bit more flexibility with resourcing, and you tend to over-resource. Yes. And the mistake people make is they just go, oh, we'll just take what we've got here and whack it in the cloud, and then wonder why they have a huge freaking bill.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, shit. I'll just knock everything around.
How's all the editing going in last episode? You have...
yeah, 90% done.
Oh, cool.
I was doing a bit today, and then had to prepare for this. All right.
So you didn't take my suggestion up and going out for brekkie or lunch then?
No, he slept in.
Oh, okay.
Which is what we needed to do. And my wife hasn't been feeling well, so...
Oh, no good.
That's all right. She'll be fine.
She's a trooper.
All right. All right, ready to go?
You gonna do your fancy wave?
Yeah, I might do my fancy wave. And welcome back to My Tech Opinion. We've had a little bit of a break and a reboot break and all that sort of stuff, and we are talking about cloud computing as our feature topic. And the thing that we're going to talk about is the pros and cons as a starting point. So having a look at it quickly at the advantages of cloud computing. Cloud computing is cost efficient. It's probably the most cost-efficient method to use, maintain, and upgrade. As I said earlier, traditional desktop software costs companies a lot of terms in finance, adding up license fees from multiple users, where you can usually get cheaper rates and scale it as needed. With cloud computing, there's almost unlimited storage. Storage information in the cloud gives you almost unlimited storage capacity. Hence, more need to worry about running out of storage space or increasing your current storage space availability. There's a little bit of an asterisk next to that, though, because you usually have to pay for that extra storage.
Yes.
So I don't know, how much does it cost for Google? It's about $40 a year for an extra terabyte or something like that. Does that sound about right?
I was actually looking at it today because I heard that they've got this new product called Google One something or other. Everyone's using... I can't understand how these companies are getting away with like borrowing terminology and names from other companies. But anyway, there's this thing called Google One that I thought was actually supposed to be rolled out to people who had G Suite accounts like I have.
Yes.
And from what I understand of it, I think it is the umbrella term that says you have got X amount of storage and that is made up of your Google Drive, your email, your photos, whatever else you've got, and that combined, it lives in a thing called Google One. But you've still got your individual Google Drive, email, Gmail, whatever it's called.
Right.
But to answer your question, my 100 gigs cost me I want to say $29 a year. That sounds a bit low. Let me have a quick look. Let's go.
So Business Insider Australia says, and this is from, no, that's old. Google.
So 100 gig is, $24.99 a year. Oh no, hang on. No, that's only half of it. So yeah, because I'm about halfway through. So it is. Your annual subscription will automatically renew on the 8th of January 2019, and you will be charged $24.99 plus tax. So yeah, so no, $28 a year.
Okay, so here we go. Google One plans will start at 100 gigabytes for $1.99 a month, 200 gig for $2.99, and 2 terabytes for $9.99 a month. While pricing plans for larger than 2 terabytes will remain the same, so on and so forth. So that's compared to Google Drive. So the thing is that yes, it's scalable, but it does cost you. So remembering, if you went to 2 terabytes, yes, it depends on what you're using it for too. Yep. So 2 terabytes, $9.99 a month. That works out to be $120 a year, and for about $130, you can go and buy a 2 terabyte drive.
Yes.
So, but once again, is that something you need to store offsite? Or is it something that you are happy to, like, is it a video file that if the house or your premises burnt down, you don't need? And you've got to come up with the value of how much it works out to be. So that is, you need to take into account, yes, you have unlimited, but you will have to pay for that storage.
So do you use that as a backup? Or do you use it like we use Google Drive, where it's more of a shared thing and we just use it to kind of move things around?
Absolutely. And that is often the best way for it. So I do a couple of things. So we obviously, for our show, use Google Drive not only for our show notes, but for also transferring files for our video editing and things like that. And a good example of cloud computing from a web app perspective is that in preparing for our show today, that I was in Google Docs as part of Google Drive, and you and I were both editing the document at exactly the same time, and you would have seen me typing stuff in live.
Yep.
Another example was just last night I hosted a trivia night, and I had 2 laptops set up connected via Office 365. So I had my friend who was doing all the scoring. He was getting the score sheets, typing it into the spreadsheet, and that was automatically updating the scoreboard on my device, which was connected to the printer.
All right.
So, that's where you do get the advantage of the cloud apps. But from a pure storage perspective, you need to assess yourself what are your like, are you buying and this is, I suppose, more personal, are you buying cloud storage specifically for the purposes of for storage because you don't want to go and buy a hard drive? Are you buying it because you want an offsite backup? And things like that, because particularly at the consumer level, it is going to be cheaper for you to go and buy a hard drive.
Yep.
And then you've got to use your internet connection to get all that data up there too.
Yep.
Whereas by paying the online service, yes, you've got somewhere to put it, but you're also having that peace of mind that things are going offsite.
Yep.
So, that cost, like they talk about cost efficient for a dollar per gigabyte. I don't think cloud storage is that cost efficient, but when you add in the availability and all that sort of stuff, it becomes quite good.
Yep.
The big one is backup and recovery, though, in terms of pros. Since all your data is stored in the cloud, backing it up and restoring the same is relatively much easier than storing the same on a physical drive. Furthermore, most cloud service providers are usually competent enough to handle the recovery of information. Hence, this makes the entire process of backup and recovery much simpler than other traditional methods of data storage. And then you've got software integration. In the cloud, software integration is usually something that occurs automatically. This means that you do not need to take additional efforts to customize and integrate your applications as per your preferences. The aspect usually takes care of itself. Not only that, cloud computing allows you to customize your options with great ease. So you can handpick services that you think will best suit you. Easy access to information, as we mentioned, and quick deployment. So advantage of if you opt once you opt for a method of functioning, your entire team can be fully functional in a matter of minutes. So a great example is Office 365. If you're a administrator of an Office 365 tenant, you can say, well, I don't want them to have access to Microsoft Teams, or I do want them to have access to Microsoft Teams, or Skype for Business and things like that. And once you turn that function on, it pushes out to all the users.
Yep.
So that's really good. Now, there are disadvantages of cloud computers. Technical issues is one, and we're going to cover this off in a minute in a bit more detail. But although it is true that information data on the cloud can be accessed anytime and from anywhere at all, there are times when the system can have some serious dysfunction. You should be aware that this type of technology is always prone to outages and other technical issues. And it even says even the best cloud service providers run into this kind of trouble in spite of keeping up high standards of maintenance. The other one is security in the cloud. The other major issue in the cloud is that of security issues. Before adopting this technology, you should know that you'll be surrendering all of your company's sensitive information, for using it for business, to a third-party cloud service provider. And it could potentially put your company at great risk. And there's prone to attack. Storing information on the cloud make your company vulnerable to external hack attacks and threats. And so, yeah, there's some major disadvantages. Now, the one that I was going to mention was, if I find my little note that I had, in 2016, the company that is probably synonymous with cloud computing these days is Amazon Web Services.
Yep.
And the way that Amazon work is that they have a number of availability zones. So they have data centers in different corners of the planet. I think they've got 2 in Australia. They might have a 3rd now. And what have you. So one of the advantages is that you have the ability to buy access in multiple availability centers. So you can say, well, I'm an Australian business. Most of the people who can access my stuff is in Australia. So I will have it available in the Australian centres. But for an extra fee, I can go to Singapore, I can go into the United States and things like that. Now, the advantage of doing that is that for the end user, it'd be quicker for them to get access because it's a shorter hop to getting that information.
Yep.
But if your data, if you had it in Singapore and we'll say California, I don't know where their availability centres are, and their centre went down in Sydney, you would still be able to get access to it from the other centres.
Yes. Yep.
Because they, on their side, auto-replicate that. Now, in Australia in 2016, Amazon Web Services had an outage on their Australian availability centres. Now, if you want to know the type of people that use cloud computing, this is always the good when a cloud provider goes down and what websites get dragged down with it gives you an idea on who actually uses them. So this was an article in the Sydney Morning Herald. And so some of the websites affected includes those belonging to Fairfax Media, publisher of the website, Foxtel, Fox Sports, car sharing service called GoGet, Daily Telegraph's NRL Supercoach website, the 9 product Stan, ticketing platform TryBooking, and online food ordering service Menulog. And there were a number of retailers that went down as well. So the thing is, if your centre has an outage, chances are all of like you're not the only one that's impacted.
Yep.
So and it shows with the heavy traffic that would go to those sites, the scalability of those centers as well.
Yep. I mean, Netflix is another classic big one that uses. I think they use AWS.
They do, and Netflix use a number of different services because they need to scale up and down depending on peak.
Yep.
So they use AWS, and they also use I can't remember the name of it, but they have like a Netflix box that sits in the data center of a lot of ISPs.
Yep.
So that they can route the traffic through that box. So rather than it going to a Netflix server in America, it can serve it in the data center for your ISP.
Yep.
Which is quite handy too.
The other thing, well, and we touched on this like last week with the last episode with the security stuff we did. Not only do you need to kind of factor in where your data is stored from just a technical standpoint, and whether it's going to be easy for your users to access. Sometimes, from a legislation standpoint, you have to have your data stored within Australia.
Absolutely. So, and you've touched on one of the points was data sovereignty. So, particularly with government sites, it is a requirement that the data is hosted within Australia.
Yep.
So, you need to, and obviously that it will be different. You need, for you as an individual, if you're looking at using Dropbox or Google Drive or whatever cloud-based service, you need to make a determination of what information you're storing and do you need to research where to store it. So for most of us, really, like using a main provider with whatever service they provide is usually going to be enough.
Yep.
However, when you start, as you said, getting into the business and the government side of things, data sovereignty is a key because having your data, say for example, it's on Dropbox and sits on an American server, that because that particular site is under the jurisdiction of the government of the United States, whatever search powers or search laws are involved, they apply to where that data is.
Yep.
So if they decide to create a Handmaid's Tale like dystopian society where the government goes a bit nutto, then I'd be moving everything out of the US or whatever country it's stored in very quickly. The downside to limiting yourself where your data is that it is, in theory, more prone to problems.
Yep. Yeah, because there's no redundancy or less redundancy. That kind of thing.
Because if you go, to Amazon, I really want that. I really want to use your cloud service, but you can't move it to Singapore, to California, to Europe or wherever. It has to stay in Australia. They will go, there is and it's probably a small risk, but they will go, there is a higher risk for your data being inaccessible because we will have a clause in our contract that says if you limit your availability, your guaranteed service time drops.
Yep.
Because that's how they guarantee their service time, by being able to make it available in multiple centers and reroute that traffic. So that is an issue, and obviously that's a risk that you would need to investigate and take as a business.
So question, and
sure.
I know because you've kind of looked into this as part of your job more recently than I have. I mean, I've kind of touched on it, but is it good enough to have it available? I'll rephrase the question. Do you have to have it only available in Australia, or as long as it's available in Australia and you can have, say, also available elsewhere just for backup purposes?
You would need to talk to a lawyer. And I'm not saying that as to skirt the answer, because but I suppose the answer is that, from my understanding, from a government perspective, is that the data must be on Australian soil.
But not only on Australian soil.
Only on Australian soil.
Only on Australian soil. Okay.
However, I have heard that there may be a option that if you hold the encryption keys for a product, then and it needs to be transferred in case of an issue, and you're the only one that can decrypt it, that it might be okay.
Oh, okay.
But that's not any formal advice by any means of the imagination for anyone listening out there. That's circumstantial discussion.
Yep. Opinion only, hence the title of the show.
Yes, very much opinion only. And I do not speak for my employer, which I won't mention who it is. But that is just what I've heard. So yeah, but no, government information cannot be stored outside of Australia, and that's set out in this Information Security Manual that's created by the Defence Signals Directorate. So you can do a search for the ISM and talks about that in legislation. The thing is that governments are looking. The government has a cloud first policy. So in the provision of any new services that government departments do, they have to explore cloud as their primary option. And if they find that it can't meet a certain need, they then can look at doing private infrastructure to do that. And the advantage of that is that, some websites will get hammered more than others. But if you're a highly transactional site like the Department of Human Services, then cloud is a good option for them. And so they need a certain type of infrastructure, but you might have I'm trying to think of a good example. We'll say the Charities and Non-for-Profit Commission.
Yep.
And I don't know the details of their particular business or anything like that, and how they operate their services, but they would have hypothetically a spike between August and October. We'll make up an arbitrary date where charities have to report their annual figures. So the advantage of cloud for them is that they can scale up their infrastructure during that period of time.
Yep.
So that's where cloud would benefit, rather than having that infrastructure in-house that covers their peak period, but it sits there all year. So did I sort of answer that, I think?
Yeah. The other thing because we mentioned Dropbox a couple of times.
Yeah.
As far as where I work is concerned, Dropbox is a no-no. We've kind of bent the rules at the moment because of some fundraising that we're doing, because a lot of the sponsors and all that kind of stuff obviously are external to where I work, and they've chosen to use Dropbox as a way of transferring things around. But unless you, as I understand it, other than Dropbox has had, it's more than its fair share of hacking and all that kind of stuff over the years. Ownership of the data is also an issue, because unless you have, as I understand, unless you have a business Dropbox account,
right,
you own the data then. But a lot of, in our situation, a lot of people that want to use Dropbox are using their own personal Dropbox accounts. So what happens when that person leaves? What happens with the data? Do they keep the data? Does Dropbox own the data? Does the data come back to us because it was originally our data?
Yeah, and this is what this is sort of goes away a little bit from cloud computing, but this goes, I think, is a lesson to business, that if you're going, I don't want to move to Office 365, I don't want to move to a cloud service, or I don't want to move to G Suite because I don't trust the cloud yet.
Yep.
What I increasingly see in volunteer business and things like that is that people will go, well, there is a tool out there that does a better job than what we can use with our internal tools, so we're going to start using it.
Yep.
And through default, they end up becoming a sanctioned tool.
Yep.
Because, like, well, so many people are using it now, we might as well use it.
Yeah.
Whereas if you go with a software as a service product like 365 or G Suite, because I don't want to take away from Google there either, that they will push new features out and your staff will use them and you maintain control of those services.
Yes.
So, which is exactly what you're saying, so that there's that clear delineation that you be, taking a step forward and saying, we'll do this. Well, there you go. It fixes your problem straight up.
Yep.
And the problem I find with Dropbox is that I find Dropbox really quite a good product. The problem is that it's one of those, it's a platform agnostic type thing. So, yeah, I know you can get a free OneDrive account sort of, but then it's sort of linked to Office and what have you. Google has that, but it's linked to G Suite at times. Whereas Dropbox is a file sharing service, like a cloud backup.
Yep.
And it's almost become that default option. So a lot of people have a Dropbox account.
Yep.
So why wouldn't you have one?
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's a tough call. It's a tough call. But yeah, you're right. Data ownership is a concern, and this is some of the issues with even BYOD devices and things like that. We've also talked about security on previous episodes. If you're using cloud services, use a password manager.
Yep. And
have your passwords different for the services, and have multi-factor authentication turned on.
Yep.
Because the concern is if you're with a service that's a weird one or an outlier and they get hacked and you've used that same password, the hackers will start testing that username and password across multiple platforms.
Yes.
And they will get hits.
Yep.
They will get hits. So, what else was there? Cloud computing market share. Who are the big providers that are out there? Amazon is probably the big daddy of them all.
Yep.
And Microsoft is growing very, very quickly. The one company that I think are not doing enough, and I don't know what your thoughts on this, Shayne, are, but one company I think that are a bit laggard on, which they're great for their services, but not much for anything else, is Google.
Yeah.
I don't know if they have Google data centers in Australia at the moment, but I know that there was questions about data sovereignty issues here. Amazon probably had data centers in Australia quite quickly, and they've been operating here for years, well, even before their .com.au retail product that we now know of.
Yeah.
But they, so they're going, but then Microsoft have made a big push, and they know that they're after particularly the government market, and they have Amazon, and I think Amazon have nearly got it, but they've got protected cloud security clearance.
Yep.
On their servers, and there's a few other local servers like Macquarie have an IT services branch with data center support, and a few other smaller players as well. Will all have rated data centers, so they've gone through an appropriate assessment by the Department of Defense. In terms of worldwide, though, Amazon is the far leader. Microsoft are growing quickly, but are there. IBM have probably lost some market share at the expense of Microsoft. Google and Alibaba's a cloud provider. I did not know that.
I did not know that either.
Yeah, there's a lot we don't know about Alibaba, I think, in terms of how they work outside of their own little sphere.
Yep.
But massive business nonetheless. But Amazon sort of created their environment because they created their own web servers and data centers and things like that for their Amazon.com product. And they went, oh, these are all pretty good. We can actually scale this up and offer this as a product, which they've done.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's quite a few out there in terms of providers, but then you hear about the big ones. And remember, things like Amazon Web Service Amazon, they probably do, but it's not that prominent where they have a, you can buy a little app or something and backs everything up onto Amazon AWS servers.
Yep.
But really, they're primarily a business to business model.
Yeah, their backup product is that Amazon Glacier, which is the upside is I think it's a fairly cheap service and for the amount of space you get. But as its name implies, Glacier, if you needed to kind of do some sort of, I think even both backing up and doing the recovery, it's kind of a trickle feed kind of thing.
Whereas things like Dropbox, Google Drive, and Microsoft, they want to get you sucked into their infrastructure and continue to pay, because the subscription model is the big on everything. Netflix, software as a service, and what have you. Where rather than paying that $500, you go, I don't miss that $10 a month coming off my credit card.
Yep.
And it builds up pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that. So yes, was there anything else that we wanted to add? What have I missed out on?
The only other thing that I wanted to touch on, and during the sort of pros and cons thing, was because we mentioned it during our little technical break, is that the mistake some companies tend to make is that when they have all their infrastructure on-prem, it's easier and I guess cheaper in relation to it being just a one-off hit, that they tend to over-resource. So they'll have like more storage than they need, more processing power than they really need, more licenses than they really need. And then when they decide to go to cloud, they'll make the mistake of going, we'll just take what we've got and just whack it on the cloud. And then they have a coronary when they start getting their bills to work out why it's so expensive.
Absolutely. And I think that you're right there, Shayne, and resource planning is probably the key. So looking at what your average use is, or your median use as opposed to your average, and then look at ways that you can scale up that usage when you do need it. So because the thing is, it'll be cheaper in the long run to do it that way.
Yeah.
Use what you can for most of the time, and if you need to scale up for key periods in the operating year, do that. In terms of some of the providers that are out there that are providing services, Microsoft, Amazon, we talked about, IBM, Salesforce are heavily into the software as a service and cloud market, SAP, which is primarily around financials and HR and workplace reporting and things like that. Oracle, which obviously is a database company, and they own CRM products like Siebel and what have you. Google, which is down the list, and the comment that it actually makes about Google here in terms of the rankings, which I think is a very astute observation, says tons of potential, but still unclear if/how it wants to play in enterprise.
No.
And that's the thing. Having, like, you can have individual customers, but having a decent enterprise customer, particularly just for cloud services, is where you get your scale for those businesses.
I think Google has still got the perception of it being, with that, and also just run by a bunch of uni students. If you look at all their sites, they're kind of really. They got these bright kind of colours there. They're kind of they're the Wiggles of the internet.
True. And they're seen as a bolt-on as opposed to a platform, aren't they?
Yeah.
ServiceNow jumps ahead of Workday. Revenue up 40%, new products boom. ServiceNow, I think...
I can tell you all about them.
Yeah, go ahead.
ServiceNow is a... platform that we use it primarily for our ticketing for our service desk. And the reason why we went for it versus the product that we used to have is it's cloud based. It's also follows the ITIL methodology a lot more closely than the one that we were using before. And yeah, we can use it for not only to manage our instances, but to manage our problems. We do it for change management. It does also have, and we don't use it for this yet, but we might. It does also have other modules that that HR can use, that finance can use. But I think its main push is used by IT companies or IT departments for the ITIL kind of and the service desk management side of things.
Yeah, and so they're providing. So they're a cloud provider, but they're providing. They're a SaaS provider primarily, aren't they?
Yeah.
Is what you're saying.
We've just implemented it, and we're still kind of ironing out some loose ends. We just implemented it at work over the last few months.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So ServiceNow were in that particular list. Workday. We're growing in platform as a service market, and VMware. So there you go. Now VMware,
they're an interesting one.
Bought out, weren't they?
Yeah, Dell owned them.
Okay.
Oh, I think EMC bought VMware, and then Dell owned EMC or something.
There you go. And there's quite a few Australian companies that are using VMware for products and stuff like that as well. So yes. So VMware, and they provide like virtual computing platforms and virtualization. So it's sort of a given that they would move into that space.
Yep.
So there you go. There's some Dell Technologies. They're a subsidiary of. So Dell have gone into that space by buying them. So there you go. So is then Citrix owned by them or something? Is that right? I don't know. I keep
no Citrix. I think are their own company. Microsoft had I think there was rumors that Microsoft were going to buy Citrix, but as far as I know, Citrix is still by themselves, or they might have something to do with Cisco.
Right, and I'm just having a quick look there. No, I think they're still there. No, they're listed on the NASDAQ, so they're they're still an individual business.
Okay,
so there you go. So, but the Citrix are not included as part of this discussion anyway. So, look, the thing is, if you are as an enterprise, obviously you need to look at or a business, you need to look at how you're going to use cloud, how it's going to integrate with your existing systems. Is it still cost effective for what you are doing? Because I think we both agree that cloud is cost effective, but it's within your specific environment.
Yep.
And then from a personal perspective, look at, is what you're doing meeting its needs? Are you paying the right amount? Are you paying at all? And make sure you, particularly if you're using a free plan, be careful of what information you put up there, because free plans are designed for one of two things. They make money off you as a consumer, so that you become the product as opposed to you paying for a product.
Yep.
And the other side of it is, if you're a free user, is that there are questions on, do you own files and what can they do with your files and things like that. Whereas by going into a paid agreement, you often bypass a bit of that. And also, where is your data being stored? Is it a reputable provider, and are you storing the right information on there? So there's all those things that you need to take into account, and just be secure about it. And we've talked about security with different authentication methods. Just make sure it's locked in as hard as you possibly can, because the downside of things being on the internet is that it can create problems for you.
Yeah. The only other one thing that I'll touch on quickly, because I know that it's a thing, but I don't know a lot about it, is monitoring of like performance monitoring. Obviously, when it's on-prem, there's a set of tools that you can use that might come with your infrastructure. So, like if you're a Cisco shop, you might find that you'll get all your monitoring stuff through Cisco. Microsoft might provide some, but when you're doing things in the cloud, especially if you've got different services everywhere, it's like, well, what is out there to kind of bring it all together from a monitoring standpoint? Now, I the only one that I know of, and it's because they keep mentioning on the Packet Pushers podcast or suite of podcasts, is a company called 1,000 Eyes. Now, they're not a sponsor, although they can be. But from what I know of them, they're a company that basically, through the use of agents and other technology, they can keep track of monitoring as far as, where bottlenecks are. If things go pear-shaped, they can also help out in, okay, well, where is the problem? Is the problem on our side of the fence? Is the problem with that provider A, provider B? So that's just another thing to kind of factor in as well when you're making either a complete move or a partial move to the cloud.
Absolutely. And the other thing is, if you're using it in a home, if you're going to be transferring a lot of data in your home or business environment, what other infrastructure considerations you need to put in place?
Yep.
So I know of a business that moved to having more software as a service type things. While they had cheaper on-prem rollout fees because they didn't have to put as much software in, they did need to upgrade their internet connection to support something for their whole business.
Yep.
So, they went from an ADSL connection to a symmetrical 100 by 100 wholesale fiber.
Oh, right.
So, they changed that overnight. But, you need to look at, and I think one of the reasons why I haven't done a lot of cloud stuff personally in the past was because of my internet connection was never great.
No.
Whereas now I know that I can back things up relatively quickly when we do, we put the video up on YouTube and things like that. For this particular show, having the faster transfer speeds makes it a lot more bearable.
Yep.
So you got to make sure that your internal infrastructure isn't going to support what you want to do with it.
Correct.
Is the key. So there you go. We've got a heap of stuff in the show notes. We've got a heap of links to different things. Have a look at it. Make some comments. Send us an email to my tech opinion on how you use cloud and if there's anything you think we've missed out on. But understand the differences between us. Like most of us will use software as a service, but there are different things to do, different things that you want to do. I mean, you can run a machine with Windows in the cloud if you want.
Yeah. And
another good example of cloud computing from a personal perspective, even though it's not out of your home network, is a NAS.
Yes.
A NAS is effectively a cloud platform, but it's just in your house.
Yes, and a lot smaller scale.
Absolutely. So, but some of the rules apply in terms of if you've got the right RAID configuration and scalability and all that sort of stuff too. So, worth having a look at. Anyway, I think we might finish up on our topic of cloud computing. What do you think, Shayne?
I think we've done a fairly good, thorough job. I think we've covered everything we need to cover.
Of course, and if you want to add to that conversation, send us an email. mytechopinion@prosumerit.com. We're going to have a quick break and then we're going to wrap this baby up straight after this on My Tech Opinion.
Yep.
And welcome back to My Tech Opinion. It is time to finish the show up for this episode 21. We stumbled through cloud computing. We talked about a lot of things, Shayne. There is a lot more people that know a lot more than we do and what you can do with it. But it's a fairly interesting industry that sort of didn't exist 10 years ago, did it?
No, not at all.
So the amazing things that you can do on that now with, faster internet connections and data connections and things like that. And there are a lot of, the one thing I didn't say, there's a lot of enterprise rollouts that I know of one enterprise grade rollout where they have a 10 gigabit dark fiber link directly from their data center into a cloud provider data center to ensure that they get the transfer speeds that they need rather than open internet. So, you can go to varying levels for the cloud side of stuff there too. So all very interesting. That said, we did touch on before our break network attached storage devices and how they sort of fit in the cloud infrastructure. And we've decided to make that our next topic on My Tech Opinion for episode 22.
Yep.
So we both were QNAP users, and you are still a QNAP user, and I've now moved to Synology.
Yeah, going to the dark side.
And I'm very happy, weirdly enough. So we will talk about that, and there's a few other network attached storage devices around. You can even look at things like FreeNAS and all that sort of stuff. So we'll be talking about that on episode 22 of My Tech Opinion.
Richie Benno.
22, or two swans if you're doing the bingo terminology. If you have a suggestion for a topic, a feature topic for our show, send us an email, mytechopinion@prosumit.com, and we'd always be happy to discuss anything that you want us to talk about, except if you're trying to stump us. I prefer that not to happen. But we will continue doing that. So until next time on My Tech Opinion, thank you very much, Shayne, for joining us. And we'll talk to you all very soon on the podcast. This has been Phil Edwards in Melbourne, and
Shayne in Perth.
Until next time on My Tech Opinion, have a good one, everyone. Bye.
Bye.